They said it so casually, as if my existence had become an inconvenience. 17 years old, standing under a gray sky, holding a trash bag that carried what was left of my childhood. The door closed behind me with a sound that felt final, like the world itself had turned away. I didn't know it then, but that single act, being thrown out, wasn't just a family betrayal, it was an initiation. You see, society loves to hide the truth behind sentiment. They'll tell you family is everything, while quietly teaching blood to feed on blood. What happened to me wasn't personal, it was systemic, a pattern older than civilization itself. Every empire, every order, every institution begins by discarding its inconvenient sons, the ones who refuse to kneel, the ones who question. I wasn't thrown out by my parents, I was exiled by the system that made them. They were puppets, and I was the mistake in the script, the one who saw the strings. That night, sleeping in the back of a rusted car, I realized something most men never face. Rejection is purification. The moment you're cast out, you're no longer part of their design. You become dangerous. The machine only fears one kind of man, the one it failed to break. The world loves obedient sons, not sovereign men. When you start seeing through the mask, through the smiling, hollow faces of approval and good parenting, you realize what you were really thrown out of wasn't a home. It was a containment field, a small, polite prison disguised as love. And the irony? Those who threw you away will one day come crawling back, not because they've changed, but because they see what power looks like once it's freed from control. That's where this story begins. Not with pity, not with pain, but with fire. Because the moment I was left alone, stripped of comfort and belonging, I met the only thing that's ever been real, the truth of myself, and that truth terrified them. They tell you it's all coincidence. The way families fracture, the way schools tame your instincts, the way faith is sold back to you like insurance. But no, it's not coincidence, it's architecture. Every pillar of modern life is built to produce one outcome, obedience wrapped in the illusion of choice. The same system that taught your parents to do what's best for you is the one that made them afraid of what you could become. You were never meant to be independent. You were meant to be managed, controlled, contained. From the moment you're born, your perception is shaped like clay. You're told what's right, what's safe, what's possible. And anyone who rejects that narrative, anyone who steps outside the approved frequency, becomes an anomaly. The system doesn't destroy anomalies immediately. It isolates them. Exile is cleaner than execution. That's why I was thrown out. Not because I was lost, but because I was found. Because I began asking questions that echoed too deep. Why do we work jobs we hate for things we don't need? Why do we worship authority more than truth? Why does love come with terms and paperwork? Those questions don't just make people uncomfortable. They unravel the entire illusion. And when you start to really see, you begin to notice how everything is inverted. The schools aren't teaching, they're erasing. The news doesn't inform, it hypnotizes. The religions don't liberate, they domesticate. Every layer of this world is designed to keep you compliant, predictable, small. But here's the secret they never told you. Exile is the first step towards sovereignty. The system can't tolerate freedom because freedom exposes its fraud. When I was cast out, I wasn't broken. I was refined. In that silence, no roof, no comfort, no safety net, I began to rebuild from nothing but raw truth. And that's when I saw it clearly. The same machine that raised me was feeding on me. And it feeds on you too. Every time you conform, every time you silence your own intuition to fit in. Most men spend their entire lives inside that feeding cycle, calling it stability. But a few, a dangerous few, learn to see the gears turning, and once you see the machine, you can never unsee it. Obedience doesn't begin with laws, it begins with lullabies. With soft words whispered into your mind before you can defend yourself. Be good. Don't question. Trust authority. The architects of obedience understood that control isn't maintained through chains. It's maintained through comfort. Make a man fear discomfort, and he'll imprison himself. That's the secret scaffold beneath our world. Invisible, psychological, generational. Every institution, from school to government, from church to family, builds on the same blueprint. The blueprint of fear. Fear of failure, fear of isolation, fear of being unloved. And when those fears are strong enough, you can convince a man that obedience is safety, that silence is virtue, that conformity is belonging. That's why they smiled while they threw me out. They weren't being cruel, they were being obedient. To them, I had violated the sacred rule. Don't challenge the order that feeds you. I became a virus in their system, A reminder that love built on fear isn't love at all. It's programming. Look deeper and you'll see it everywhere. In your job where loyalty is traded for exhaustion. In your relationships where validation replaces connection. In your beliefs where comfort replaces truth. Obedience isn't demanded anymore, it's disguised as morality. You don't even know you're kneeling because they built the floor around your knees. But the moment you refuse to kneel, that's when everything shifts. You lose their approval, their affection, their acceptance. You lose the mask. And that loss is terrifying, until it isn't. Until you realize that every chain you ever wore was forged from your own need to belong. When I was 17, sleeping in that car, I thought I'd lost everything. But what I actually lost was my leash. I stopped performing for love. I stopped explaining my worth. I stopped apologizing for existing outside the mold. That's when something ancient awoke in me, the part of man that remembers freedom before the world invented control. The architects of obedience hate that memory, because once a man remembers, he can't be managed, and once he steps outside their walls, he becomes something they can't predict. They told us education was enlightenment, but it was really erasure. From the moment you enter a classroom, they begin the slow dismantling of your original mind. The wild, instinctive, questioning intelligence that once burned behind your eyes is quietly replaced by repetition, compliance, and reward cycles. You're not taught to think. You're taught to recite. The hidden curriculum was never about knowledge. It was about hierarchy. The bell that rings every hour? That's not a schedule. It's a conditioning tool. The desks in straight rows, the standardized tests, the authority at the front of the room. It's the same structure used in factories, prisons, and military training. All designed to teach one thing: your power belongs to someone else. They don't teach you history, they teach you a version of it that keeps you passive. They don't teach you how to build, they teach you how to obey. And they certainly don't teach you the forbidden subjects: how money is created, how emotions are weaponized, how institutions engineer dependency, how belief systems are installed. By the time you leave their halls, you've forgotten what freedom feels like. You call submission stability. You call fear responsibility. You call indoctrination education. It's elegant. A psychological trick so old it feels natural. The slave who doesn't know he's a slave will guard his cage like it's home. I saw it all from the outside. While others chased approval, I was rebuilding instinct. I studied what they never wanted me to learn, the patterns beneath the narrative. Why rebellion is demonized. Why independent thought is punished. Why every man with too much self-knowledge is labeled dangerous, unstable, or arrogant. They call it discipline. Stores, mistaking caution for wisdom. Don't dream too big. Be grateful for what you have. Play it safe. These aren't teachings, they're containment spells. And yet, every few generations, someone breaks the pattern. A son refuses to inherit the fear. That's when families fracture, not because of hate, but because of evolution. The one who sees cannot unsee. The one who knows cannot unknow. I became that fracture. When they threw me out, they weren't expelling a child. They were rejecting their own reflection, the part of themselves that dared to live without permission. I became the ghost of what they could have been if they'd ever followed truth over comfort, and that's why they had to erase me. But exile gave me vision. I began to see fear for what it truly is, not an emotion, but an ecosystem. Everything from advertising to politics to religion feeds on it. Fear is currency, fear is control, and the man who learns to stop trading in fear becomes untouchable. So I burned my inheritance. I buried the guilt, the need for approval, the obsession with being good. I became the end of that bloodline, and the beginning of something else. And here's the paradox they'll never admit. When you stop fearing loss, you gain power. When you stop begging for love, you attract respect. When you stop running from fear, it starts running from you. Every machine runs on fuel. Empires run on gold. Corporations run on profit. But the modern world, this sleek, digital, smiling cage, runs on human fear and attention. That's the engine hidden beneath the comfort. The moment you understand that, everything starts to make sense. You are not the customer. You are the product. Every screen, every click, every emotional spike has been designed to extract something from you. The system doesn't care what you believe, as long as you feel. Anger, envy, outrage, desire. It all feeds the same circuit. Attention equals energy, and energy equals control. The machine doesn't care if you love the system or hate it. It only cares that you can't look away. That's why suffering never ends. That's why division is profitable. That's why fear is always trending. You think the chaos is accidental? No, it's engineered. Controlled imbalance is the oldest psychological trick in history, the same one ancient empires used to rule cities of slaves. Keep the masses reactive, never reflective. I started seeing the pattern everywhere. Media didn't inform, it provoked. Politics didn't solve, it divided. Religion didn't save, it sedated. And every time I got angry, outraged, or self-righteous, the machine smiled, because even my rebellion was data. Every reaction was a confession. That's when I realized something most men never grasp: you can't fight the system while it's inside you. You have to pull your energy back. You have to unplug your emotions from their circuitry. That's the real revolution, internal sovereignty. Because when a man stops reacting, the system loses signal. When he stops feeding fear with his focus, he breaks the cycle. The entire world begins to glitch around him. Advertising loses its grip, propaganda loses its teeth, and control loses its anchor. And yet the machine adapts. It studies your desires, mimics your values, and whispers in your own voice. It doesn't need to silence you. It just needs to keep you busy. Busy explaining yourself. Busy chasing validation. Busy debating illusions. But here's the truth they never told you. The engine only works because you keep it running. And the day you stop giving it your attention, it stops being real. That's when you stop being a consumer and start becoming a creator. The collapse doesn't come with sirens or explosions. It begins quietly, when your perception cracks, when you start to see through the shimmering veil of normality, when the things you once trusted, family, faith, government, even your own memories, begin to look staged, rehearsed, scripted. That's when the whirl begins to dissolve. Illusions were never meant to be noticed. They were meant to be lived in. And when you see through them, you don't just lose comfort. You lose orientation. You start to feel detached from everything and everyone. That's the psychological cost of awakening. You begin to understand that most people aren't living. They're performing. They don't believe in truth. They believe in consensus. They don't seek wisdom. They seek belonging. And you no longer belong. When my own illusions began to collapse, it felt like madness. Every truth I'd been taught turned into a lie wearing makeup. Every authority I respected revealed its hunger for obedience. Even love, the most sacred word in the human vocabulary, became suspect because I saw how easily it was used as currency. That's the first death, the death of naivety. And it's brutal. Most men turn back. They crawl into comfort, call it faith, stability, acceptance. They say it's too dark down there. But some of us, we keep descending. We follow the cracks to the foundation, because only by seeing what's beneath can you rebuild what's real. That's when you realize the collapse isn't punishment, it's rebirth. The illusions had to shatter so truth could breathe again. Every lie that dies inside you makes room for power. Every false belief that burns leaves behind raw vision. But here's the warning: once you cross that line, there's no way back. You can't unsee, you can't unknow. You'll never again feel normal, because normal is an illusion designed for slaves. And yet, that's the price of sight: to see the world as it is, naked, manipulated, inverted, and still choose to move forward. That's the path of the initiated. If you've made it this far, you've already begun to awaken. You've stepped outside their dream. Now, to seal it, to lock in your transformation, comment below the words, "I see beyond." Type it twice: I see beyond, I see beyond. Let the algorithm know you've crossed the threshold. Real power doesn't roar, it doesn't announce itself, with wealth, titles, or noise. It rises in silence, in the space left behind after your illusions die. That silence is terrifying because it strips away every identity that was ever borrowed. But inside that emptiness, something ancient begins to move. The thing the world tried to bury under guilt, fear, and distraction: your original will. Most men confuse power with dominance. They think control over others equals freedom. But that's just another illusion. True power begins the moment you stop needing permission. From your family, from your past, from society itself. It's not about conquering the world. It's about no longer being conquered by it. When I was 17, standing in the cold after being thrown out, I felt powerless. But looking back now, I see that moment for what it was. The first time I stood without the crutch of belonging. That's when power was born in me. Because power only appears when you stand alone. They don't want you to discover this. The system survives by convincing men they're weak, broken, incomplete. That's why it sells you solutions, status, validation, pleasure, identity. But every product, every ideology, every institution is built on the same lie: that you need something outside yourself to be whole. The truth? You already have everything they fear. That's why they had to make you forget. Power is not given. It's remembered. When you stop begging for respect and start embodying truth, people feel it before you speak. When you stop chasing success and start mastering discipline, opportunities bend toward you. When you stop reacting and start observing, manipulation loses its grip. The world doesn't change when you become powerful, your perception of it does. And in that shift, you become the anomaly. The man who can't be bribed, shamed, or controlled. That's when they notice you again, the same ones who once exiled you. But now, they come with softer voices. They miss you. They want to reconnect. But it's not love that draws them. It's the magnetism of power they no longer understand. And when they look into your eyes, they see it. The man they thought they destroyed has become something untouchable. They never expected to see me again. Not like this. Not standing tall, unbent, unbothered. The same people who once told me I'd never make it, who closed the door and watched me disappear into the night, now stood before me smiling. Rehearsed smiles, the kind you wear when you're afraid of ghosts, because to them, that's what I was, a ghost of consequence. The living reminder that their judgment had failed. You can feel it when you walk back into a room that once rejected you. The tension, the confusion, the silent question, how did he survive without us? They expect scars, bitterness, maybe anger. What they don't expect is composure. And that's what terrifies them most, calm power. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself. When they said we miss you, I didn't hear affection. I heard regret. Regret that the control they once had no longer worked. Regret that their version of reality had fractured under the weight of mine. They missed who I used to be. The obedient version. The grateful version. The one who needed their permission to exist. But that version was gone. I didn't come back for revenge. That power isn't something you take. It's something that returns when you stop denying it. Every trauma, every betrayal, every failure you've endured is an inversion waiting to be reclaimed. You don't heal by running from pain. You heal by standing in it until it kneels before you. The law of reversal doesn't care about justice. It cares about balance. The energies we suppress, the truths we hide, the people we discard, they all come back wearing new faces. And when they do, the weak call it punishment. The wise call it alignment. So remember, what you fear will rule you, what you face will serve you, and what you master will transform you. That's how every downfall becomes ascension. Awakening sounds romantic until it happens to you. Then it feels like death, not the kind that ends your life, the kind that ends your illusion of it. Because once you awaken, you can't go back to ignorance. You can't laugh at the same jokes, chase the same desires, or pray to the same gods. The curtain lifts, and you see the world naked, trembling under its own deception. That's the real price of awakening, isolation. You stop belonging, not because you're arrogant, but because you see too much. Conversations that once entertained you now feel hollow. People you loved begin to sound like echoes of the system you escaped. You're surrounded by sleepwalkers, and no matter how loud you scream, they just smile, nod, and go back to dreaming. At first, that loneliness feels unbearable. You crave connection, someone who gets it. But awakening isn't meant to comfort you. It's meant to refine you. It strips you of dependency, forces you to face the truth that you were never supposed to be part of the herd. You were meant to lead yourself. I spent nights staring at ceilings in strange rooms, wondering if maybe ignorance would have been easier. But then the silence would answer. That cold, steady presence reminding me, you were not built for comfort, you were built for clarity. That's when I understood that awakening isn't a reward. It's a responsibility. You start to see the hidden gears turning behind everything. The media's puppetry, the economic illusions, the moral inversions, the spiritual theater. You watch people defend their cages, mock their saviors, and call it logic. That's when pity turns to power. You stop trying to wake others and start mastering your own vibration. Because power in a sleeping world is dangerous. Not because the world will attack you, but because it will tempt you. It will offer you comfort again. Money, attention, approval, anything to make you lower your awareness. The price of awakening is eternal vigilance. You have to guard your perception like a fortress. But when you do, you begin to walk differently. You speak with less noise. You see manipulation coming before it arrives. You become untouchable. Not because you fight harder, but because you see clearer. That's the paradox of awakening. It costs everything unreal and gives you everything real. When you awaken, the world doesn't change. You do. And through that change, you begin to see the world for what it truly is, a mirror. Every cruelty, every betrayal, every manipulation was never just happening to you. It was showing you, the weakness you had to outgrow, the fear you had to face, the strength you had to forge. My parents weren't villains. They were mirrors of a system that had forgotten. RTS rewriting it from within. So if you've walked this far with me, understand this: the pain that once broke you was never punishment. It was a portal. The rejection that haunted you was your liberation in disguise. And the loneliness that followed wasn't exile, it was initiation. You were never meant to fit into their world. You were meant to build your own. And the next time they say they miss you, smile gently, because they should. They miss the version of you that served their illusion. But that version is gone, replaced by the man who finally sees. Now walk, don't look back. The door they closed behind you was the same one that led you to freedom.